Today we're going to talk about Albert Bandura, one of America's greatest psychologists. He developed the social cognitive theory. So we're going to talk about his life today and his theories and his professional life and all of that. Albert Bandura was born December 4th, 1925 in Alberta, Canada. He was the youngest and only boy of 6 children. He lost 2 siblings. One was to a hunting accident and one was to the flu pandemic. Even after these tragedies in the Great Depression, his parents did their best to instill joy for celebrating life and the importance of education in all of their children. Bandura's primary education was explorative and self-educated, mainly because the only school in their town had only 2 teachers and very limited resources. Because of this, during the summers, his parents encouraged exploration outside of their small, secluded neighborhood. One summer, Albert Bandura actually worked at a furniture manufacturing plant in Edmonton. This is where he maintained carpentry skills that got him through college. During college, he worked at Whitehorse in Yukon, protecting Alaskan highways from sinkholes. In Albert Bandura's early professional life, he stayed fairly busy. In 1949, he graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of British Columbia. When he graduated, he was awarded the Bolakin Award in Psychology, which is an award for an outstanding student in psychology. In 1951, Bandura underwent graduate school at the University of Iowa and obtained a master's degree in psychology. In 1952, Bandura obtained a doctorate in clinical psychology, and he was the first to demonstrate self-efficacy in his theory. We'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about his theory exactly. After college and everything later in his life, he jokingly, he liked to brag that he met his wife while golfing. The two met and struck up instantly and were married in 1952. It was Virginia Varnes was her name. The two had 2 daughters, Mary in 1952 and Carol in 1958. Among these years, in 1953, Bandura received a job at Stanford University as an instructor in the psychology department, and by 1964, he was a full professor at Stanford University. In 1974, Stanford awarded Bandura an endowed chair, which was a high honor to him, and he became the David Starr Jordan Professor of Social Science and Psychology. The theory that Albert Bandura developed was the social learning theory. The social learning theory essentially means that new behaviors can be acquired by learning and imitating through models in the environment around them. This could be your parents, your teachers, any educator in your life. It could even be the TV. To prove part of his learning theory, Bandura conducted the Bobo doll experiment in 1961. Just to summarize, Bandura took 3 groups of children that were pre-rated on anger with a 5-point rating system. They were each allowed a period of time in a toy room that consisted of a Bobo clown blow-up doll. The 3 groups were each subject differently to a pre-aggression. The first group was exposed to a group of adults treating the Bobo doll with extreme aggression, some even using hammers to beat the doll. The second group was exposed to mild aggression, and the third group was the control and was not exposed to any aggression. And in proving the theory, the children exposed to major aggression were majorly aggressive towards the doll themselves when allowed to go into the room. The control group essentially ignored the Bobo doll, so he just proved his theory more that models influence behavior. Some of the professionals that influenced Bandura in his life were B.F. Skinner, who's the founder of the operant conditioning, meaning operant conditioning is just a method of learning using rewards and punishments to obtain a learned behavior. John Watson established the psychological school of behaviorism, and Ivan Pavlov, who developed classical conditioning, which is basically learning through association. He said two stimuli that are linked will create a new learned response. Another influencer in Bandura's life was Robert Sears, who is a chairman at the Stanford Psychological Department. The two worked on some research involving aggression in teens and whether or not hostility and aggression in parents basically rubbed off on the children. And by 1959, the two had published their records and findings in a book called Adolescent Aggression. In 1963, their second book was published called Social Learning and Personality Development. And by 1969, Bandura was offered a fellowship at the Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Sciences. This was a center near Stanford that brings scientists and scholars from around the world based on their excellence in psychology. In 1977, Albert Bandura offered a theoretical framework in his social learning theory. This is where we'll talk about that self-efficacy. This theoretical framework played a huge impact in the psychological world. He released the framework Self-Efficacy Toward a Unifying Theory of Behavioral Change. He believed that self-efficacy, or the belief in one's own capability, had an effect on what individuals choose to do, the amount of effort they put into it, and the way they feel as they do it. He felt that the missing piece of his theory was the self-beliefs, and that played a big role in the social learning theory, and therefore he renamed his theory the social cognitive theory. Throughout Albert Bandura's life, he was one of the greatest American psychologists. In 2002, at the age of 90, Barack Obama actually recognized him as a recipient of the National Medal of Science. After this, he stayed in California near Stanford, carrying out his life, and he is still even described as one of the greatest psychologists alive. Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory is still used widely today in today's education. As technology provides new and innovative methods to create social learning environments, the one aspect of technology is the ability to interact and observe each other, hence the social cognitive theory. Regardless of the model, in this case technology, the influence is still there. Students are still able to mimic and interact and review models, whether it be internet, TV, social media. Regardless of the model, the influence is still there. So social cognitive theory research is highly sought out between educators, parents, and policymakers because the explanatory power in understanding human development, practicality, and applicability to learning all falls into today's education. It's clear that Albert Bandura is, in fact, one of the greatest American psychologists. His social cognitive theory is still widely used today, and he is a highly respected psychologist in the world of behavioral and educational psychology. Thank you.